As darkness swathed around his figure, and nightfall descended upon him with a cool embrace, Private Jameson felt each step he took on the frozen mountain road was as heavy in memory and weighted down by an unshakable sense of loss that seemed to echo through the desolate landscape. He had not expected this journey back from North Korea after his platoon's successful push into Pyongyang, a retreat ordered under orders he couldn't fully comprehend given its senselessness against all logic forged in battlefields and strategies alike. The snow beneath Jameson's boots crunched persistently with each of his steps, a harsh sound that seemed to mock him as much as the biting wind howled through a world turned silent by war, where frozen rivers flow like liquid death in their icy grasp and mountains loom menacingly overhead. The sight before Jameson now was not one he had expected when first stepping off his plane. It felt surreal to be back here under the same sky that witnessed such horrors or cruel twist of fate, where home meant returning with a heart encased in frozen chambers, heavy and unwelcoming. Jameson's breath fogged up before him as he exhaled deeply into the frigid air, each puff dissipating quickly like smoke from an unlit fire. It was oddly disconcerting to watch his own body betray a need for warmth that seemed so out of place here in this land where survival meant fighting against not just enemy lines, but nature itself, a relentless foe dressed as snow and ice, threatening with frostbite's silent onset. The night was deepening. The stars had begun their dance above him when his boots crunched through freshly fallen snow that blanketed what remained of this once thriving village, a remnant of civilian lives disrupted by war, now just a backdrop to Jameson's weary thoughts. The echoes from the battle seemed miles away in memory, and yet were ever present here on these roads. He had marched down under duress during one of history's most harrowing conflicts, the Korean War, that claimed more lives than any other modern confrontation, a war where ideologies clashed as fiercely as steel against steel. He remembered the frozen Chosin and how it encapsulated this strange reality he found himself in, not because of its literal coldness, but due to an emotional landscape that had been just as barren after months inside foxholes, behind trench lines, a world where camaraderie was a flame flickering feebly under relentless gusts and hope seemed like foliage in winter. As Jameson trudged onward through the silent streets of this frozen village that felt more spectral than real, he reflected upon why they were fighting here, at a land war where understanding each other's side was as elusive as capturing a ghost within thin mountain air heavy with memories. The Chosin Reservoir lay in his rear view like an open wound beneath the moon's cold gaze, heaving back and forth with waves of blue water that seemed to mirror both time's passage and its stagnation under warfare, a relentless cycle where no one knew if they were moving forward or merely circling a dead end. The thought of his young comrades who had joined the ranks, leaving behind their families and hopes for peace he couldn't even begin to grasp, weighed on Jameson's mind as effectively as the burdensome pack strapped over his shoulders, a constant reminder that this journey was not just a return trip, but an escape from something far more profound and unsettling than any personal loss. Above all, he felt disconnected to these lands of frozen whispers, where once vibrant markets had thrived under the warmth of shared dreams, a stark contrast to his reality as a man torn from those dreams into an existence defined by fear and survival against unfathomable odds. With every step on this snow-dusted path, Jameson sought solace in routine. Heat maps drawn across frozen terrain that had once been home now represented only the cold truth of geography, or cruel irony where distance from enemy forces meant being closer to despair and a bitter sense of isolation. This was not just his journey back, but also an internal voyage through years spent trying to find solace in battle's camaraderie, finding it as transient as the blizzards that swept across this land every winter, a reminder that peace is often won and lost with each snow. The winds had been gentle today, a rare respite from their usual fury that seemed to understand and respect even our deepest fears, offering only mild chills instead of biting cold gusts. Jameson wrapped his cloak tighter around him as he trudged forward on the snow-dusted path, his footsteps marked by an aching solitude in this frozen expanse that was once teeming with life and laughter, now just a desolate memory under layers of white. The market square where Jameson had learned to dance amidst cheers stood empty, the baker's cart abandoned like so much unpaid wages as war ravaged through these lands, leaving only echoes in its path, echoes that seemed louder with every step he took towards his family. The journey was more than just a physical trek across miles of unforgiving terrain. It was an attempt to reclaim what had been lost amidst the chaos and despair. But Jameson's heart held far too many unanswered questions, for peace in their world seemed as distant as home itself, a place he hadn't seen since his mother kissed him good-bye before she went off with a soldier who promised safety yet delivered only anguish. And now here he was again, walking through the barren fields that had witnessed so much joy and sorrow alike, their stories frozen in time like ice sculptures of human experiences or painful testament to lives disrupted by conflict beyond his control or understanding. As Jameson's boots crunched upon a recently fallen snowflake, he remembered the jovial faces around him, friends who had become family over shared bread and stories under twinkling stars, voices that once sang with harmony now replaced only by howls of wind in this wintry void. His thoughts spiraled towards his sister's garden, where roses bloomed bright against a backdrop of evergreens, her favorite hobby, or stark contrast to the gray world he found himself wandering through tonight under an uninterested sky that blinked with stars like distant lighthouses warning ships lost at sea. The silence was broken by an abrupt thudding sound from behind him. His companion, a soldier named Illy, who had shared many nights of restless dreaming beside the flickering hearth, their only source of warmth in this unforgiving climate where coldness seeped into bones and souls alike. Jameson turned to find an object wedged between frozen snowbanks, a small, hand-carved wooden figure that reminded him of his childhood days when every step meant discover when the world was painted in vibrant hues rather than muted grays like nowardscape before their eyes. "It's just an old toy," Illy said with a sigh, recognizing its significance all too well as he handed it back, without a second glance at Jameson's face, a reflection of the pain and loss that had become inseparable companions on this journey for both men. One who sought solace through memories while trying to forget his own childhood was torn apart by strife. "It's more than just an old toy," Jameson whispered, taking it with reverence, as if the touch could resurrect those long-lost days of innocence, or time when laughter and play had been their constant companions even amidst looming threats beyond these lands. Illy watched him for a moment before continuing his own thoughts. This land he'd come to, with hopes frayed like the edges of an old map that was no longer reliable, but still held stories within its worn lines, or testament to places traversed and struggles endured by many hands now lost in time. They walked on for a while before halting beside a frozen stream. Water once clear as crystal turned murky with the remnants of battles fought above, where only ice could mirror its historic ripples, disturbed occasionally to shower echoes from afar instead of mingling waters. The night sky draped itself over them like a heavy quilt, stars shining down as if trying their best imitation on the moon, but pale against her own brilliance, and tales untold, or luminescent beacon calling Jameson back to memories that even now seemed more ethereal than tangible, as they approached what he hoped would bring them closer, not just physically, but emotionally as well. A church where his family gathered with neighbors, finding solace in communion and prayer, a place of refuge for many who had also sought sanctuary here during the darkest times. When Trust Jameson took a deep breath as he stood atop an ancient hill that had withstood centuries of change around it. His heart echoed in rhythm to its steadfastness, mirroring Illy's silent thoughts about impermanence, and light as a reminder from nature itself. He looked upon the church where memories lay thick like fog amongst these sacred grounds, a beacon through stormy times when hope seemed as fragile as glass, yet unbroken by fate or fortune's cruel hand. As he joined Illy beside that same frozen stream, they had paused before now and then in their travels across this land of contrast, where life thrived even beneath the ice, where tiny fish writhed underneath thick layers of snow each winter only to emerge with spring's touch as if reborn anew. The church loomed ahead like a guardian from days gone by, its steeple pointing skyward, while stone walls stood vigilant against the backdrop of time itself, a testament not just to faith, but also resilience in face of hardship and loss that history had woven into every pore of this place. Jameson remembered tales his grandmother would tell him as a child, how their kin found solace here during times when darkness seemed never-ending for the soul, how prayers were whispered like incantations to keep hope alive, casting light through shadows that sought ever more than just refuge from strife. They entered with hesitance, but also anticipation, Azalee led Jameson towards a wooden door carved delicately at its center, an invitation for them both into what promised not only communion of the spirit, but perhaps, in some small measure, a healing touch upon wounds that had yet to fully scar. The air inside held stillness and age-old prayers lingering like perfume on worn cloths, which whispered tales as much about their own lives as they did for others who came before them seeking comfort or solace here within these sacred confines. Jameson felt a kinship with this place that stretched back beyond his lifetimer lineage of souls bound together not just by faith but shared journeys through seasons when life seemed nothing more than endless trials for survival, where every sunrise carried the weight of yesterday's struggles and dreams cast long shadows upon each day until nightfall came to whisper promises like so many before. Billy stood silently beside him as they walked past rows after row of pews, empty but not without stories etched into their wooden faces, silent witnesses that had harbored laughter or held back tears during times when the heart seemed too full even for God's embrace alone could soothe. Times like these were what drew Jameson to this place with Ellie now. They found themselves at a small, barely noticeable chapel tucked away within its walls, an intimate space where one might seek connection beyond the communal and into their own spirit amidst prayers whisper for strength or courage as they faced trials, unseen trials that would test even those who walked these hallowed grounds in search of peace amongst storms. Billy gestured towards it with a nod, an invitation not just to sit together, but perhaps find pieces long lost within themselves through whispers from the past, echoes carried forward by faith and hope's enduring flame amidst darkness that saw always more than survival. It was here where souls found respite between battles, for on distant fields or in fractured homes. Jameson took a seat upon an aged pew beside Illy, his eyes drifting towards the intricate mosaics adorning these humble walls, each tile bearing witness to countless prayers offered by hands that had come before eyes like windows into souls who knew hardships but sought always more than mere survival amidst trials and tribulations. He felt a sense of kinship with those whose stories remained imprinted upon these very stones, tales woven together through threads spanning generations, binding them inextricably within the sacred place that had offered solace even when hope seemed as distant as stars from earth-bound sands, a refuge for weary hearts seeking not just physical sustenance but spiritual nourishment amidst a world where faith could be both shield and sword. As Ellie shared stories of his own family's journey here over generations, he spoke with fondness tinged by sadness, tales that began in love's embrace before life had woven its trials through their lives like threads through fabric, a pattern emerging from chaos where each stitch held promise even as uncertainty loomed large overhead. Jameson listened intently, feeling the weight of his own past and present intermingling within these walls, recognizing it as Jameson and Ellie settled deeper into their contemplative silence within those walls that had borne witness to so many stories. A gentle knock on the pew beside them broke the stillness of late evening prayers like delicate glass underfoot, a reminder of life's continual passage. Startled from his reverie, Jameson turned towards Ellie with an apologetic smile, for their conversation tonight had not been about family histories or tales as much as it was a shared experience that needed to be acknowledged before they could drift once again into stories past and present intertwining within these sacred confines. The man who stood there at the entrance, dressed in clothes worn by time itself, a well-loved shirt frayed on its cuffs, but still holding together tales of warmth from hands that had long since passed through their own, was none other than Mr. Thompson, Illy's father's dear friend, and a man whose presence was often felt more in the absence his hearty laughter left behind rather than by any words he might speak or deeds done during his lifetime. The community knew him as an old soul who found solace in stories told under this very roof, or sanctuary for memories that refused to fade, just like Mr. Thompson himself seemed determined not to do so either through heartache nor the passage of time. Without a word between them about how it was unexpected and tenderly welcome as rain on parched earth, they rose from their seats in unison, Billy leading Jameson by his hand back towards where old friends awaited with open arms, some such being Mrs. Thompson herself, who greeted the visitors warmly despite her advanced years having taken a toll not just upon body but spirit as well at times, when it seemed she had become more spectre than woman of flesh and blood within these hallowed walls that cradled generations like nests do fragile eggs in nature's care. Their shared meal, consisting mostly of humble bread baked fresh each morning by Mrs. Thompson's hands as a gift for all who sought comfort here, a gesture reflecting her belief that sustenance was not only physical but spiritual, to allow Jameson and Illy to recount the tale of how Mr. Thompson had first found solace in this holy space when he himself could no longer travel down memory lane without feeling as though his legs were made from lead rather than bone. For age, much like life itself, within these walls where time seemed both eternal yet fleeting simultaneously due to endless cycles of renewal and decay. As the night drew on into an early morning, with a crescent moon still hanging lazily in slumber above the mass sentinel silently observing all human affairs from its lofty perch, Illy's grandmother would often whisper to him tales as if they were secret knowledge meant only for his ears. Stories of how her own family had come here many decades ago seeking refuge after their homeland was torn apart by wars and strife, a place where weary souls sought not just physical sustenance but spiritual nourishment amidst a world often uncaring about the pain endured. Illy paused his storytelling to help Mrs. Thompson in clearing away dishes, her hands trembling slightly with each delicate task, completed a reminder that even within sacred spaces, where stories intermingle like threads spun from life's loom itself and woven into tapestries depicting times both joyous and sorrowful alike, one could still find fragility amidst strength. As they worked together, Jameson found himself reflecting upon his own family's journey to this place, where faith had become not just a shield against life's relentless siege, but also the sword with which he carved moments of peace in times when shadows threatened to envelop him, whole, a realization dawning on him that perhaps it was here, amidst these ancient stones and whispered histories carried through time like leaves borne upon wind currents across vast seas, where his own story would continue its weaving into the fabric of this place's ever-expanding tapestry. As he looked back at Illy with newfound understanding in those deep, kind eyes, a mirror to a soul that had navigated through stormy waters yet emerged stronger for it, Jameson knew his visit here was not just about seeking solace, but also offering up tales of resilience and hope as gifts upon these sacred shores. For within the heartbeats echoed by prayers whispered in earnest fervor beneath this very roof that sheltered them all, from weary traveller to homebound child, from widow's sorrowful embrace back when life had been full of promise rather than desolation, there was, as Jameson's gaze swept over the courtyard's serene setting fountain with its rhythmic cadence provided by unseen hands, and statues frozen in perpetual prayer or repose atop their pedestals as if to guard these sacred moments of tranquillity against time's encroaching shadows, felt an aching resonance within his heart. It was here, at the tapestry, he bore witness to threads interweaving through a lineage, where each generation added its hue and texture, their stories not lost, but rather enriched by every whisper of faith-laden footfall upon these stones. In Illy's presence their figure, as steadfast in spirit as the granite guardians that stood sentinel around them, Jameson felt a kinship forged through shared histories and silent understandings beyond words, born from an unspoken language of resilience against life's relentless siege. Illy's eyes met his with no need for further dialogue as they spoke volumes in their depth. It was within those kind reflections that Jameson sensed the echoes of a soul tempered by trials, yet standing unbroken like an ancient oak weathering countless storms to reach skyward once more. The courtyard's quietude invited them into its embrace as they found benches carved from local wood, their creators, hands guided not only in artistry but also by devotion, imbuing each piece with a spirit of comfort and enduring hope which now cradled Jameson back through time. Illy's fingers traced the intricate patterns on his own bench as he recounted tales passed down from an ancestor who had sought solace here not so long ago, stories where sorrow was transcended by a steadfast faith, and even in absence of loved ones their spirits remained ever present within these sacred halls. As Illy shared his narratives with Jameson to joyous celebrations that once unfolded upon this very ground, when the promise of life bloomed like flowers along pathways, then came tales tinged by sorrow's shadow, as times arrived for farewell, imparting lessons in love's impermanence and faith's enduring power to carry one through after loss. Or chorus of silent prayers rose from the walls around them. Together they stood amidst these sacred stones that had borne witness to countless such narratives as Jameson unveiled his own tale, a journey marked by moments where faith served both shield and spear in life's battles, forging paths through darkness with the light of belief illuminating the way. His story was one not unlike Ellie's before him, their essence intertwined like threads within this communal tapestry that stretched far beyond themselves into eternity itself. As twilight deepened and stars dusted across night's canvas overhead, a celestial choir accompanying the symphony of rustling leaves from ancient trees lining their sacred sanctuaries, Parameter Jansen realized that his purpose transcended personal solace, for here was a realm where tales not only commemorated but also inspired resilience and hope. His visit had become an offering to this cradle of shared human endeavor against life's tumultuous seas. Each heartbeat beneath these roofed arches contributed its own vibrant note in the hallowed chorus that saw harmony with divine reverberations through time immemorial. Within his soul, Jameson knew, he carried forward not just a piece of this ancient legacy, but also an opportunity to weave new threads into the fabric, threads imbued with contemporary courage and timeless hope, for within these sacred confines lay fertile ground where stories could root themselves deep in faith's nurturing soil. As night enveloped them, Illy rose gently from his bench as if to rejoin spirits of yore who had once found solace here too. It always returned with renewed strength and a heart's Jameson closed his eyes for a moment longer than necessary and allowed himself to drift upon memories, embracing the comfort found in Illy's presence, their figure, who seemed as much of mythic law here as any stone that had been carved by weathered hands through ages past. In this sacred space, where dreamers once sought refuge from life's tempests and now returned with tales not only to remember, but also share, Jameson felt an unexpected kinship bloom within his spirit, a resonance between the man who sat on Illy's bench decades ago and himself in that very moment. He recalled how years before he too had sought this place for solace after trials of loss. It was here where Illy, with a voice soft as dusk's last light, once shared his own story, a parable woven from threads of hope against the darkest despair. This tale served not to console, but rather ignited within Jameson an undying flame that would burn through adversity and darkness till dawn's promise whispered onward. As twilight deepened into night, a choir seemed to arise not one of flesh and blood alone, for the wind carried melodies as if sung by spirits long departed yet ever present in this living archive of human resilience. Trees ancient beyond measure stood guard like silent sentinels over Jameson's own journey forward. Their branches cradled stories that soared high above him, while roots delved deep into the fertile earth, where secrets lay buried and dreamt beneath time-worn stones, the very foundation upon which this sanctuary was built. Jameson sensed it in his bones. Wasson's story had been interlaced with these sacred threads of continuity. As Illy once learned from an elder who sought refuge among the gnarled oaks, so too did Jameson find understanding that life's trials were but part of a larger tapestry, a design far grander than solitary experience. And within this revelation was etched his purpose, to be not just another thread in its weave, but one who might mend frayed edges and fortify weakened strands with bold stitches of hope, renewing the communal fabric for those yet unborn generations that would come forth from these hallowed grounds. With Illy's parting words echoed like a benediction in his ear, "Let your journey be one of weaving, and not merely threadbare," Sir Bible Jensen rose, as if the very earth beneath him was an ancient mother offering her last blessing before she too would sleep for eternity. He approached Illy's vacant seat with reverence, but also a renewed sense of mission imbued within his soul's core by the sacred communion shared under starlit canopy, and whispers carried through rustling leaves are testament to the strength found in unity, resilience, faith, and hope. He could see Illy had already begun anew as he returned into himself, a man transformed from once wary traveller turned guardian of these tales against life's ever-turning tides. Jameson took his place beside the bench where Illy sat moments before, a pledge to carry forth their shared legacy, adding new-found courage and threads bright with contemporary light into stories told by heartbeats that would reverberate through eternity, just as those of old had done long ago beneath this very sky. With each step away from the sacred site's threshold, where tales intermingled like breath and air, a place both removed yet intrinsically his own within these consecrated walls, Jameson knew he was but a conduit through which new stories would flow, threaded with lessons of endurance and hope that had been lovingly woven into the very fabric of this communal tapestry. As night's full embrace took hold around him, now cloaked in tranquil darkness save for stars, twinkling like distant lighthouses, guiding ships, through stormy seas. He felt not just a custodian, but also an active participant within the continuum of narratives that transcended individual existence. As Jameson took his first deliberate step backward from the threshold of sacred ground, where tales breathed and danced in a symphony only whispered to those who truly listened, he sensed an overwhelming desire within him or need not just to witness history, but also partake in its enduring song. The night seemed alive with potential as each star overhead promised new stories yet untold, narratives that would join the chorus of ages past and present under this same celestial dome. The following dawn found Jameson sitting atop a gentle hill overlooking an ancient forester place where he had spent countless hours, with Illy amidst their shared escapades into history's embrace, learning life's most profound lessons through the lens of humanity's past. The sun peeked timidly above the horizon, as if hesitant to disrupt the sacred stillness he had found in this place or space where both man and nature converged seamlessly into one continuous storyline, a living narrative that spoke not just through books, but resonated within his very soul. On clear mornings like these, when dew kissed every blade of grass as if renewing the earth's commitment to life itself, Jameson would begin penning letters and notes in an old leather-bound journal he had found tucked away beneath a floorboard within Illy's childhood home. This diary held memoirs or mosaic of experiences that both men shared during their escapades through the annals of time, exploring ruins where once mighty empires rose and fell with the setting sun on each day's end. One such morning had brought them to a crumbling stone bridge over an ancient stream, a place rumored among locals as haunted by spirits clinging tightly to their tragic past. Yet it was this very location that held Jameson's heart most dearly. Here Illy's grandmother used to tell tales of her ancestors, and the legends they were a part of how faith in one another had sustained generations through times both bountiful and barren. As he traced his fingers over faded carvings on weather-worn stones, Jameson felt as though each etched letter was imparting wisdom directly to him from the lips of history itself, an invitation to be a guardian, not just in spirit, but now also with pen and paper. He knew these stories were precious jewels meant for safekeeping within his own journal until he, too, could one day pass them on further down through time's unyielding march. It was beneath this very tree that Illy had once whispered secrets of courage to him after they'd stumbled upon a hidden cache in the heart of an old monastery, a place where silence spoke louder than any echo within its hallowed walls could ever convey. The discovery, made during one such journey into yesteryear by lantern light and torch flame glow, had revealed personal letters exchanged between two lovers in the midst of civil strife. Their words were a poignant reminder that love's essence was timeless, her beacon amidst life's tumultuous storm. Jameson remembered how Illy would lean forward as if to absorb every syllable, his eyes reflecting both sorrow and the unshakable belief and hope beyond their current predicament of wandering souls lost within time's labyrinth of sentiment that had brought them together, but was now a shared commitment extending far beyond themselves. The journey through Illy's grandmother's family tree, tracing lineage back to the very origins where they first encountered one another on their path of discovery, became not just an exploration into ancestry, but also a pilgrimage toward understanding humanity's shared heartbeat across centuries, a rhythm that pulsed with each act of faith and hope. Their time together had been measured in days, as fleeting yet impactful as the seasons themselves, from springtime revelations beneath flowering cherry blossoms to winter's embrace, where they huddled close by flickering firelight reciting tales that intertwined with their own shared history, becoming one. It was a time when Illy taught Jameson about resilience through stories of his great-great-grandfather, who had once stood firm against the onslaught of war and hardship, just as he would now stand beside him in protecting these tales for future generations to behold, her custodian born from necessity yet chosen with heartfelt resolve. Within Jameson's journal lay a letter Illy had written. The warmth from their campfire crackled softly, reminiscent of hearth fires that once beckoned kin together for tales of yore. Illy's voice weaved narratives where resilience was not just an act, but a symphony played out over generations. As he spoke with reverent clarity about the hardships his ancestor had faced, Illy imparted upon Jameson this same tenacity that would soon become their own shared anthem or commitment to protecting these stories as sacred trusts for those who might follow in time's unending riverbed. Jameson listened with rapt attention and a growing sense of purpose within his chest, the weighty importance of history was not lost upon him. He knew that each story told had roots deeper than their own lineage, yet stretched into an earth where human spirit met adversity head-on in timeless struggle. As Ali continued to narrate tales seasoned with perseverance and fortitude, Jameson understood the gravity of his role as a caretaker for this legacy. He was not just bearing witness, but becoming part of something far greater, a custodian chosen by need yet embraced through love. Their conversation turned to Ali's great-grandmother, who had been like an anchor in stormy seas, her strength on War 01284 not diminished with the passage of years, but rather woven into a tapestry that Jameson could feel beneath his fingertips as he traced lines on the map. The journey through time was no longer just to Ali's family, it had become their shared voyage, and together they would explore each twist in history like rivers seeking the sea's embrace. As night deepened its hold over them both with a velvety darkness that seemed almost tangible against skin kissed by cool air of untouched nature, Ali's tales began to intertwine themselves into Jameson's own life story. Each ancestor was not just an echo, but also a whisper shaping his character and resolve. The stories were the threading needles, sewing together their identities and patterns that revealed family bonds beyond bloodlines. They had become threads of gold within each other's hearts, forging connections as unbreakable as time itself seemed to be around them. Within this intimate cocoon of shared histories and futures yet unfolding like a map drawn out before their very eyes, the two men found themselves at an impasse, and understanding that they were but travelers in both literal wanderlust and metaphorical journeys through time. As Ali recounted his great-great-grandfather's journey from youth to old age within this shared campfire glow, it became clear the path forward was paved with stories of love that transcended lifetimes. They were custodians not just by circumstance, but also through trust, guardians sworn in solemn oath under twinkling constellations. The final chapter emerged as a seamless weave between narratives and reality, where the act of preserving history became an intimate dialogue with past souls that had once shared this very earth beneath their feet. It was here they made pacts not just to honor, but also to learn from, a sacred stewardship entrusted upon them as if by fate itself. It seemed time held no dominion over Ali and Jameson, for within each other's company lay an unspoken agreement that history would always find a voice through their unity of purpose. Amid the comforting embrace of shared tales and laughter echoed between branches, swaying in sync with the wind's gentle breath, they understood there was no final chapter to be written, for as long as stories were told within earshot or heartbeat could carry on whisperings from ages past. And so Ali's journal letter that had been tucked away during their journey became a testament not just of the man he is, but also an invitation for Jameson, standing now alongside him with shared resolve in a place where time seemed to fold upon itself like pages in an ancient tome of history. Ali and Jameson found themselves beneath a canopy woven from tales, both somber and joyous, or forest that remembered all who had passed through its embrace over the centuries. They were here for more than just escapism. Their mission was one of profound importance, to unearth truths nestled in history's heart, stories yearning to be told once again amidst a tapestry interlacing fact with folklore. As dusk settled on the forest like velvet upon skin, and stars began peeking through gaps where leaves whispered secrets of olden days, Ali unrolled an aged parchment or journal letter that he had found in his grandfather's study amongst countless other mementos. The faded script seemed to dance under the moonlight, as if alive with memories. It was a silent beacon calling them back to their purpose here and now, where they stood guardians of history's whispers. Ali carefully traced his fingers over words penned in elegant loops that spoke not only of duty but also personal revelation, soft love found across epochs within this very soil, beneath twisted boughs reaching for the heavens as if trying to touch the stories they held close. He read aloud, letting each syllable echo among ancient oaks and wise willows. Dear Jameson, in times when our ancestors walked these paths under constellations similar to this night's firmament, love was their compass through life's turbulent seas. We are chosen as custodians of the past not by mere chance, but with solemn hearts and eyes wide open to learn from history so that we might better our future. Jameson listened intently to his friend's recitation, her heart swelling at each word resonating within their shared bond. She knew this letter was more than just an invitation. It was a call across the ages for them both. With reverence and quiet determination sparking in her gaze, she reached into her satchel of relics or medley that included locks of hair from historical figures whose spirits seemed to watch over their quest with hopeful intentions. As Ali finished reading aloud the letter's closing thoughts, he and Jameson stood together at a crossroads carved out by time itself, where two paths diverged in this eternal wood lined with flowers that bloomed under moonlight to celebrate human resilience through ages of joyous gatherings. The other was shrouded not just in darkness but also mystery, for it led them further into the heart of history's embrace, where they were destined to unearth lost chapters and whisper forgotten tales back to life. In this sacred grove, their shared laughter mingled with rustling leaves as stories unfolded a narrative dance that spanned from triumphant legends about heroic deeds at the Battle of Hastings in 1066 all the way to tender moments encapsulated within delicate love letters never sent. Each story whispered, each emotion felt and embraced by Ali and Jameson drew them deeper into communion with souls who once shared this earth but now found solace amongst these enduring trees that guarded history's echoes like faithful watchers over the eternal resting place of time itself. Together, they unearthed a locket buried under roots entwined in an ancient elm, an emblem worn by queens and kings alike who loved across lifetimes within these very branches that now swayed to the wind's gentle breath as if carrying messages from souls long past. The trinket, though weather-beaten around its edges, gleamed with a luster untouched by errors. It had adorned it a sparkling testament of enduring love and humanity that transcended mere existence within the confines of time's relentless march forward. As they traced faded engravings on its base, Illy whispered ancient names known to him through his grandfather's teachings. Eleanor Roosevelt, King Arthur, and Guinevere, fictional yet immortalized by tales that breathed life into history's most poignant moments. Each artifact unearthed told its own story, each one a testament to the lines intertwined with this land throughout countless seasons of sunrise over dew-kissed meadows and moonlit revelries beneath canopies that sheltered generations from history's gaze as much as they watched it unfold. As night deep as Jameson and his companions continued their journey beneath the ancient elm's expansive embrace, where time seemed to pause, they came upon a hidden grove shielded by nature, itself a secret haven that cradled tales of yore within its emerald arms. Amidst this sacred ground lay an array of stones arranged in curious patterns. These were not mere pebbles, but markers left behind as breadcrumbs through time, guiding seekers towards stories yet to be told by the whispering leaves above and below them on the forest floor. With a reverence born from touchstones that connected their fates with those who had once roamed these very paths, they each picked up one of the stones, feeling an inexplicable kinship, as if it pulsed to match their own heartbeats or symphony echoing through generations. These artifacts were not just remnants, but keys unlocking doors within themselves and between them that had been long sealed by time's indifferent hand, revealing the shared humanity across ages in silent communion beneath an ageless sky. Night began to cloak their C019 with a hushed darkness punctuated only by fireflies dancing like living constellations around the mere reminder that light and dark were not opposites but partners within the same eternal waltz of existence, each necessary for appreciating life's full spectrum. As dawn approached on the horizon's edge, casting a golden glow over dew-kissed leaves like liquid crystals, reflecting back at them their own icer mirror to souls long gone yet forever present in this place of eternal rest and remembrance, Jameson felt an ancestral call echo within his chest. He knew then that it was not just the elm, or even time itself, which they sought, but a reconnection with something far greater than either, their own lineage woven into history's grand tapestry through love and loss, as old as humankind's desire to feel immortalized. Together with his companions at the elm's roots where secrets lay buried, Illy knelt down on one knee beside an unassuming stone that seemed out of place amidst its kin or simple monolith whose surface bore no inscription save for a single word, eternity. It appeared to be more than mere rock. It resonated with the energy pulsing through their shared journey, binding them as keepers now and forevermore. In this moment of quiet understanding between souls adrift in history's vast sea, a connection so profound that even time itself seemed reluctant to disturb its water stirrings, and whispered a name into Illy's ear, his own ancestor, one whose life had been as rich and mysterious as the land they stood upon. and with each syllable shared between them under watchful trees in silent communion, where every leaf rustled like pages turning back through time's endless chapters, or narrative unfurling itself before their very eyes amid whispers of wind that carried tales from beyond life's final curtain call. A new chapter was born. The storyteller within Jameson could not help but see in this sacred grove the embodiment of all stories ever told, and yet to come a place where every soul's echo melded with others lost or found throughout history's endless march forward. Here they were part of a continuum that wove through time like roots seeking water beneath sun-dappled earth. And so as the first light peeked over distant hills and blessed their faces, aim or promise renewing with each passing days, cyclothare hearts whispered in unison, here, amidst these sentinel trees that bore witness to epochs unfold like blooming flowers under seasonal tides of change, within this grove where the whispers turned into song and stone sang stories backward through time's flowing river until it merged seamlessly with its source at the ocean's end, they found their beginning, and in doing so discovered that all journeys must return to a singular truth. We are but travelers passing between now and forever under watchful guardians who see not just our fleeting moments as mere seconds ticking away on life's grand clockwork. Instead, these ancient sentinels recognize us for the storytellers at heart, that each soul is her tale unfolded with every breath we take. And in this moment of awakening to their own tales, threaded through eons and etched into bark as deep as memory itself, Jameson felt an unshakable peace settle upon his spirit like dew on the under a sky painted with hues of deep indigo and muted lavender as dusk approached its zenith. Jameson felt an unshakable peace settle upon his spirit like dew on ancient Barker, comforting embrace after the day's relentless march through history's corridors. It was within this grove of sentinel trees that he often found himself lost in thought and reflection, their time-honored presence a constant reminder of nature's own steadfast passage of time or contrast to his transient existence among the chronicles of humankind. As Jameson closed his eyes against the soft, whispering wind, memories began to dance at the edge of consciousness like shadows seeking light in twilight's gentle glow. Each memory was a thread woven into an intricate tapestry depicting scenes from countless bygone eras. They unfurled before him as vividly as if he were reliving them once more, though the sun had long set and night claimed its dominion over earth's surface. He remembered a time when empires rose like mountains in his mind's eye, mighty structures of stone and ambition that crumbled into dust yet left indelible marks upon history's vast canvas. He recalled the silent resilience shown during times of great upheaval, where even as calamity struck fearsome blows to human endeavors, life stubbornly persisted in verdant patches and wildflowers that thrived amidst ruins. There were memories too tender of shared laughter with loved ones under the sheltering canopy of these very trees. There was a comfort knowing they had witnessed his ancestors' joys just as acutely, their roots intertwined in silent solidarity through generations that passed beneath them. Jameson felt an echo within himself resonating from those leaves rustling overhead, her heartbeat synchronized with the pulse of history itself. He understood then more than ever before how each moment was a note strung along this continuum, every life like him adding depth and texture to its evolving melody. As Jameson contemplated these intertwining histories beneath his fingertips, rough bark cool against the warmth of skin that had grown accustomed over years spent in scholarly pursuit, could not help but marvel at how time seemed to fold upon itself here, within this sacred grove. It was as if every epoch and era he studied converged into a singular point, where past met present beneath the watchful gaze of these ancient sentinels who knew neither beginning nor end. They were simply guardians of memory's sanctum or testament to continuity that transcended temporal bounds. The grove's timeless air carried whispers, not just in sounds, but also through visions Jameson had experienced while poring over ancient texts and manuscripts within the hallowed confines of his study. Images projected themselves before him like scenes from a well-thumbed tome, histories unfolded with each breath he took. These were tales that unfurled backward in time, revealing secrets once locked away by history's enigmatic embrace until they emerged whole and clear against the light of understanding's flame which had been passed down through ages, to him alone a torch-bearer for truth. It was here that Jameson often felt most connected with time itself, as if his existence could stretch endlessly into eternity while simultaneously being a mere blink within it all. The trees stood resolute alongside this paradoxical sensation of both transience and permanence, a constant reminder to honor each moment for its unique significance. Within these groves he had learned not only about past civilizations, but also about his own lineage's roots that delved deep into antiquity. Tracing them back through the annals of time was akin to unraveling an intricate puzzle, where each piece fit seamlessly within its rightful place, or chronicle told with reverence for all who had walked before. As night's curtain drew near and stars began their slow march across velvet skies, Jameson knew that he was not merely a passive observer of history, but an active participant in the narrative continuum. Every discovery made within these groves added to his own story, a living thread interwoven with threads spanning back through time. He felt humbled yet emboldened by this realization, as if he was now a keeper of tales wherein each generation contributed their chapter in the grand anthology that humanity had authored, and within himself Jameson settled back against an ancient oak that had borne witness to centuries of whispers and secrets. As he closed his eyes, a gentle breeze played through the leaves above, a natural lullaby for this solitary night when everything felt inextricably linked with time itself. With every rustle, memories unearthed themselves from deep within Jameson's mind like fragile fossils that told stories of ages past and hinted at origins long forgotten. As the moonlight filtered through the canopy to paint dappled shadows on his face, he thought back to a peculiar evening many moons ago, when an elderly woman in flowing robes had approached him beneath these very trees with eyes reflecting mysteries untold and stories yet sung. She spoke of legends that were as much about the land they walked upon as the mad tale where time itself seemed malleable, bending to wills beyond mortal comprehension. This forest, she had said in a voice like wind through chimes, holds keys not just to history's past, but also its future. Her words were cryptic yet compelling, as if they hinted at destinies that intertwined with his own bloodline or lineage fought lost. Driven by an insatiable curiosity and a sense of duty he felt toward the continuum of time itself, Jameson had returned to these groves night after night, each visit weaving him deeper into history's fabric while simultaneously marking forward strides in his personal chronicle, as if guided by unseen hands across generations that stretched from sun-drenched temples built millennia ago through the darkened ages of empire and conquest to a world where information flowed faster than thought could keep pace. He sought answers within these very trees, embracing words about his ancestors who had once walked this earth with equal parts valor and vulnerability. And now here in chapter 12, as Jameson traced the initials of those ancients etched into a nearby stone bench, something shifted inside him. It was not just an acceptance, but also recognition, a realization that he had been part of this narrative all along, and his actions within these groves were reverberating through time. The elder woman's prophecy seemed to have found its fulcrum in Jameson himself, as if history conspired with destiny for him. The night before the full moon was due day, prophesied by ancient rites and whispered law that connected fate itself across ages, during and made his most significant discovery yet, a hidden hollow beneath an overturned log wherein he found remnants of pottery, bones, and charcoal drawings. Each artifact spoke silently but eloquently about lives lived fiercely in their time. They were tangible echoes from souls who had once trod these paths just as surely as his own feet now did beneath the same stars that watched over them eons before and will watch far beyond him. As dawn's first light began to break, painting golden hues across a sky deepening into royal indigo, Jameson whispered an oath not of vows, but of commitment or pledge. He intended to honor the legacy left within these groves for all who would come after in times yet untold. Each artifact's tale was now his own. They became chapters that were etched into the annals of both history and personal narrative, as if by a collective hand across time, linking Jameson's story with those ancient once-living bridge between epochs wherein he felt not merely an observer but a custodian. The elder woman's words resonated within him more deeply now. You are the keeper of tales, and every chapter you write is in honor of all who walked before. It was clear that his journey here had led to this moment or confluence where past and present met with reverent hands, guiding toward a future yet written. Within these groves, Jameson felt he belonged not just as one man among many, but an integral thread in the grand tapestry of humanity's shared story. Each artifact unearthed was another verse added to this epic poem that had been composed with lives lived by countless others. As dawn turned into day and shadows gave way to light, Jameson knew his role within these groves transcended mere curiosity. It became a sacred trust vested upon him as guardian of time's legacy. As he left the forest that morning, carrying with him not just relics, but an awakened sense of purpose and continuity, it was clear to Jameson now more than ever. Jameson stood at the edge of his once confining office, now bathed in morning sunlight that filtered through tall, ancient windowsills, a symbolic transition from a world measured by ticking clocks to one where time flowed like water across age rings within heartwood and stone. With each artifact he had catalogued over countless mornings since this transformative encounter with the elderly historian in those sacred groves of history, his understanding deepened into reverence for times when gods were worshipped under moonlit skies and tales passed down through generations by file, at each story a thread that wove together humanity's rich heritage. Today was no different. As he unrolled scroll after ancient scroll within the sanctuary of his study, their parchment skin crackling like autumn leaves underfoot, while they whispered secrets from ages long past to him alone in this quiet room where time itself seemed hushed and expectant. The first chapter commenced with an artifact that lay before Jameson, a bronze helmet adorned with the visage of Athena, goddess of wisdom among mortals. Its form was both exquisitely delicate yet resolute against centuries, where, as if it were a silent testament to human resilience and reverence for legacy. In his hands trembled not just an object, but generations' hopes encapsulated in metal, waiting once more to be honored with respect beyond the confines of dusty tombs or forgotten temples, or narrative unfolding as he traced intricate designs that had been etched by countless fingers across millennia. Jameson felt a profound connection. His own story was but one verse in this ongoing epic, each discovery an echo of lives lived with fervor and passion for existence itself. He would not be the last to uncover such treasures as he continued through time's grand tapestry, a guardian charged by fate or divine providence to stand watch over these relics that breathed life into history's silent narrative, now vibrant within his grasp and eager for revelation. Today marked the unearthing of an amulet made from a single turquoise stone set with gold filigree, a piece as precious to Jameson's soul as it was rare in form, its azure depth capturing flickers of light like shards caught within glass. This trinket had once been clasped around the neck of an ancient druid who sought harmony between humankind and nature itself. Now, centuries later, held tenderly by Jameson's fingers, was a promise to honor that balance amidst modernity's cacophony, or sacred pact whispering in every facet. Each artifact he catalogued not only bore historical significance but served as conduits between the past and his own present existence. They were bridges, tangible yet ethereal threads binding him to those who had roamed these earthly realms before suns set on their lives, or communion transcending language or epoch. Jameson felt a sense of kinship with each person he touched through the ages, as if across time there existed an unbroken lineage uniting all human souls in shared experience and aspiration, regardless of culture's vast diversity. The morning waned to afternoon. Shadows stretched like memories fading into twilight as Jameson continued his silent dialogue with history's voice. His role within these groves, a sacred trust that now resonated in every corner and crevice where the past whispered of forgotten lives lived fervently. The air held an almost tangible weight, one heavy with stories yet to be told. It was as if time itself conspired to guide his hands through its unseen threads, each artifact a key turning within history's vast lockbox. And so Jameson catalogued feather quills alongside astrolabes and pottery shards until the sunset's amber glow spilled into dusk, casting an ethereal light upon his work that seemed to animate these silent witnesses of human endeavor. His fingers skimming over surfaces smoothed by weathering winds, or hands lovingly caressed with reverence. As night approached and the moon's silver eye observed from above in quiet judgment, Jameson closed each artifact within its case, as if tucking his charges into bed after a day of restful tales. Her guardian entrusted to protect their stories until they could be shared anew, with curious eyes open wide enough to perceive the wonders held by time's hand. His heart swelled with purpose, for he knew that in safeguarding these treasures from the ravages of oblivion or greed, as Jameson finished securing his last artifact within its protective case for the night, A gentle warmth of contentment settled deep in his Chester soothing balm to tired bones after days spent as custodian among whispers and echoes of millennia. The groves stood sentinel around him, ancient oaks whose roots had entangled with forgotten remains now resting under their watchful limbs, forming a sacred arboreal crypt for the memories that these objects harbored within them. The following morning greeted Jameson, as it always did, with golden fingers peeling away night's velvet drapery to unveil another chapter of daylight's tender promise over the land he held so dearly stewarded. He rose with sunrise, his movements deliberate and measured. A silent homage paid each dawn, as if acknowledging that every moment here was pledged in honor of history's solemn narrative, continuous thread woven through time itself by hands both great and small. His work began anew under the caressing light, sorting artifacts with reverence bestowed upon them for their role as gatekeepers to stories untold or half-remembered from civilizations that had once danced beneath these very trees, or dance of creation, destruction, and rebirth through ages. Jameson's hands moved like a conductor before an invisible symphony hall, each movement deliberate, bringing forth melodies carried in the air since days when gods mingled with mortals unknowingly on earth's fertile stage. His day-to-day became less about cataloguing and more of listening or practice honed by years spent amid relic whispers that now felt like a close kinship rather than mere objects to be studied under glass cases or within the sterilized silence of an archive room miles away from where they'd once breathed life. These were his companions, silent historians whose tales had found solace in Jameson's care and passion for their preservation or devotion, that allowed him not just to touch history, but feel its pulse beneath the fabric of time-worn materials clasped within each artifact's frame. The sun traced its arc across the sky, casting shadows upon relics like a painter strokes his palette with hues only seen in dreams, and Jameson was both artist and curator under nature's watchful iron alchemist, transmuting time into palpable history as he handled each piece. The groves seemed to hum along, their leaves rustling like pages turning through the air that wafted over his head in a cool breeze which carried secrets from ancient tongues long dead and silent now but for these objects cradled so tenderly by Jameson's grasp, for man whose heart knew no other place than where past, present, and future converged under this green canopy. As the afternoon sun dipped lower into its golden hour throne in the west, casting long shadows that danced upon his work till the like spectres of yesteryears come to pay their respects, Jameson allowed himself a moment's pause, a brief respite wherein he sat on an aged log beside one particular artifact. The object before him was simpler than others. It bore no elaborate craftsmanship, but held the weight of its humble purpose inseparably woven into history's grand tapestry, a small clay figurine, eyes that seemed to follow his every move from beneath an unassuming painted smile, or silent sentinel itself. Jameson traced his fingertips over carvings worn smooth by the touch of countless seasons, and hands long turned to dust. He could almost hear footsteps on ancient paths, feel the warmth of a fireplace's glow against skin that had felt it before him, or sensory echo from lives lived fully within these groves. With each day's closing chapter in his heart, as Jameson continued this sacred dialogue with history through artifact and soul alike, he was not just preserving the remnants of a time bygone, but safeguarding the breath that animated the man legacy entrusted to him until historians might once more discover their significance. Evening approached as Jameson wrapped up his day's work, with care for each piece assigned its proper place within this chronicle keeper's haven, every artifact a chapter, and he but the diligent scribe recording tales of love lost to time yet preserved in clay or metal by hands that once believed their stories would endure beyond them. The setting sun kissed his cheeks one last time as if bidding farewell before nightfalls. The wood was darker now with the caressing touch of time. It bore a patina only enhanced by his careful fingers as they traced symbols etched into its surface, or map that seemed to pulse beneath fingertips, leading him through forgotten corners where history had laid silent witnesses. The chest resisted opening easily at first with the stubbornness of age and disuse. It was not until Jameson applied a combination he learned in his readings about long-lost ancient methods, or mixture of natural resin sealant, lemon oil to ease friction, followed by gentle yet firm tugs on its rusty clasps, that yielded an audible click. A musty scent wafted from within as the lid creaked open, revealing a world untouched for centuries, or collection of artifacts nestled amongst layers of fabric and earth-colored sediment, each piece seemingly ordinary at first glance, but pulsating with stories longing to leap forth. His heart quickened. This was no mere historical find. The chest seemed alive in his hands as he gingerly removed a bronze key wrought from the ore mine by forgotten civilizations or talisman, perhaps. With renewed resolve and an insatiable curiosity driving him forward into uncharted territory of history's whispering legacy, Jameson began cataloguing each item. A delicate locket containing strands that might once have been the tresses of a woman he could not recognize, but felt his soul knew intimately. Jewel-encrusted earring depicting an NM0 Attic creature said to be guardian spirit, feared or revered in legend tales. These objects held were as tangled and richly complex as the roots of the very oak that had shielded them. As Jameson continued his work into twilight's embrace, an unsettling sense began encroaching upon him. He felt eyes not human watching from shadowy folds where light hesitated to linger, or perhaps it was just the chill of impending night that tingled at his spine. Despite this growing disquiet, each artifact's tale fortified in Jameson's mind as indelible impressions upon his very essence. He could sense their emotional resonance with him. Hours melded into one another until the night sky unveiled its jeweled canopy above, while beneath it a chill began to settle, and shadows grew bold against stone walls that had stood sentinel over secrets long buried within these groves. Jensen could almost hear whispers of ancient conversations carried by wings through time. An unexpected discovery beckoned him towards an unassuming section he hadn't explored yet, where a series of delicate papyrus scrolls lay wrapped in linen. The script was faded but legible. It told not just history's tales, but that of personal journalist or merchant lost at sea with his family treasures aboard the sinking vessel he'd sought to protect, an artist who vanished into legend after completing a masterpiece now thought mythical. As Jameson unraveled one scroll and then another by candlelight that fought back against creeping darkness inching across his sanctuary of historical whispers, the air seemed charged with revelation. His role as guardian was not merely to preserve but also to reconnect lost souls with their histories. The more he delved into these stories steeped within papyrus and metal alike, a sense of understanding blossomed in him. History wasn't just about events that occurred or objects left behind. It reached into the essence of human experience itself. Joy, sorrow, hope, fear, love. These artifacts were not mere relics to be catalogued, but emblems and conduits for a legacy far deeper than their material presence suggested. They bore witness as much to personal stories etched in time's passageways as the broader strokes of history's pen. With each piece Jameson tenderly placed back into its newfound home within protective encasements, as Jameson gently placed one final scroll into its casing of glass and metal, an echo from an era where artisans crafted beauty with nothing more than their hands, chisel in hand, to shape history's narrative stone by stone. The room felt less like a sanctuary for the past and more like it had always been his. The weighty presence of each artifact seemed as if they were whispering directly into him. Stories begged not just to be told, but lived once again, in memory or dreams where time bent willingly at their behest. The next morning found Jameson awakening before the dawn had even dared touch his window sills, with its rosy fingers of lighter habit born from nights spent within these walls that echoed tales not meant for a single guardian's keeping but shared among all who yearned to remember. The first ray touched upon ancient stones and dust-laden shelves, drawing forth the scent of beeswax candles mingling with leather and parchment or perfume that held echoes of his mother's touch when she guided him as a child through these same halls. With each new day's start came another hour spent in quiet reflection, the world outside fading into mere background noise against which he could hear history speaking directly to him. And so it was that Jameson began documenting not just what had transpired, but also capturing how those events felt warmth of a mother's embrace or the chillness in her eyes when she foresaw tragedy. He realized these emotions were integral threads woven into history's tapestry, and he needed to convey their texture alongside dates and names so that future generations might truly grasp not just facts but experiences as well, a sense of humanity pulsing through time's veins like lifeblood. Jameson meticulously transcribed the tales onto crisp white paper with ink blacker than midnight, each word a step backward into history's embrace, where he could touch and feel, as if it were happening all over again, to rough sea spray on his face, the salt-water sting of tears from loved ones long gone. He poured himself into these stories so deeply that they felt less like artifacts to be housed within walls, but rather living entities with needs for sustenance and care as much as any person does. Their lives intertwined with our own in ways we often forget or choose not to acknowledge until something is lost, stolen from us. On one such day of documenting, Jameson came across an intriguingly out-of-place item, a small brass compass that had somehow found its way into the collection, alongside countless scrolls and paintings, or navigational instrument seemingly misplaced amongst his carefully curated array. Yet something about it called to him, perhaps because of this strange find. He felt an undeniable connection with mariners who'd braved uncharted waters, not knowing if the compass would lead them home or deep into despair's abyss, or feeling that seemed almost surreal as Jameson sat there in his quiet sanctuary. He began to write about a young sailor whose heart yearned for adventure but was equally haunted by longing. He found solace not just at sea's vast expanse or among the stars overhead during endless night watches, but within these four walls where history whispered secrets lost and tales untold. The compass became his muse, as though it held a piece of its voyager's soul that yearned for release from captivity, not only on wooden decks but also in the silence he'd grown accustomed to over years spent among relics rather than people, our life suddenly feeling too insular. Jameson realized his own journey had been much like a voyage, steering through uncertainties, with moments of trepidation and exhilaration alike, as though the wind was at his back or bearing him down into depthless waters where some like refused to touch. It all felt familiar in this compass's presence. He started writing about journeys not only across oceans but through life itself, tracing lines of experience that often led us astray from our destinations, yet revealed the most precious discoveries along the way. Love found and lost, like a pearl within an unruly sea, resilience forged in Harticus flames. As time passed on, an eternity to some, but mere moments fleeting across Jameson's mortal coil, felt his own story interlacing with those encased before him like threads of silk woven through the fabric of Jameson's fingers traced over the cold metal of his grandfather's compass as he sat cross-legged on an aged Persian rug, illuminated only by a lone candle flickering beside him, a stark contrast to the starless sky that had been both backdrop and companion during countless night watches. The needle quivered with every breath of draught slipping through cracks in his study's ancient stone walls before settling, as if acknowledging Jameson's silent question, "What course should my life have taken?" Not once but many times over, the compass did not lie. It had led sailors across treacherous seas where they met their fates between waves and tempests. Yet its direction felt almost arbitrary now, as the young scholar sought meaning beyond the call of duty to explore realms uncharted, not just physical but emotional, psychological journeys that ebbed and flowed like tides within one's heart chambers. Jameson's thoughts were interrupted by a gentle knock at his door as he rose with renewed purpose. The compass had stirred something profoundly unexplored in him, a sense of kinship to those who once charted their lives through its guidance. Despite Jameson's seclusion amongst relics and whispers of history, he found Alara waiting for him on his study's threshold. Her presence always felt like an anchor tethering him back from the edge he sometimes teetered upon during solitary reflections, with artifacts that hummed tales older than time itself, stories ripe to be told in new voices and times. Her eyes held a universe of their own warmth against his cool intellect, as they were both historians, of forged different paths under the same sky's guidance. She sought understanding within human connections, while he delved into personal introspection through historical echoes, seeking solace, yet craving conversation in silence-laden spaces. "Come," Elora said with a smile that danced around her features like sunlight on water's surface, "let's hear the stories you find between these walls and share them." She led him out of his study or haven where every artifact whispered its own history. Yet they all lacked one human voice to complete their narrative. They walked through a gallery filled with antiquities that told tales in dusty tomes, pottery shards from forgotten cultures, maps dotted and faded but alive under the caress of expert hands during restoration. Jameson's own hand learned now on these delicate relics. Each piece was like a star fallen too soon into history's unfathomable depths, yet held eternal light within its form to guide curious souls through time and emotion alike. The duo sat amidst ancient texts as they spoke of voyages that ventured beyond the known world, expeditions driven by dreamers whose lives were unified in purpose, even if divided along sea's expanses, their spirits now entwined within every line Jameson penned. Alara suggested he chronicled these intertwining tales as a bridge between his solitary reflections and the silent stories yearning to be heard beyond earthen confines of tombs and vaults, or literary odyssey that would weave narratives from echoes across generations, breathing life back into histories dormant in forgotten corners. The idea struck Jameson with a force as if the compass itself had turned its needle within his chest. He felt an ancient longing to reclaim stories not just for knowledge, but understanding of existence's shared human tapestry, where each thread was colored by joy and sorrow liketh pearls born in life's tempestuous oceans. Together they sat beneath a sky painted with the hues of dusk as Jameson felt his fingers begin to dance across paper once more. Ilara's presence stirred anew within him, not merely as a partner, but catalyst for expression that had lain fallow in dreamy silence ere symphony composed by historians through shared insights and unspoken yearnings. As night embraced the horizon, Jameson envisioned his words to be like seeds carried upon compass-bound wings across a world parched for connection between souls separated not just in space but time. He would write of love's tenacity against life's relentless storm, the delicate strength found when hearts learn resilience from shared pain. He imagined stories that flowed like rivers through mountains and valleys, touching lives across eras with whispers of unity and humanity, tales where each misstep was in chapter 18 of our tale nestled within time's embrace. Jameson and Alara found themselves wrapped in a cocoon woven from moonlight threads as they shared stories beneath the star-pricked sky, their breathing synchronizing with each other's heartbeats. The night was their canvas. Upon it were painted dreamscapes that danced between reality and reverie, creating an atmosphere where time seemed to fold in on itself like origami swans taking flight backward into the past. Jameson spoke of a village forgotten by all maps but history, a place suspended atop cliffs overlooking ancient seas whose waves told tales older than any living soul within them, while Alara hummed tunes that resonated with echoes from civilizations swallowed by time's insatiable maw. They conjured images of children dancing in fields where once stood Templars, her world untouched yet alive beyond the veil of years. Their voices wove a duet, intertwining past and present as they painted scenes vivid enough to transcend time. The first whisper was Jameson's recounting of an old seafarer whose compass did not point north but always towards hope. Ilara's hands moved gracefully in the air above her head, mimicking a dance said to have swayed gods themselves, born from joy and sorrow alike. The story flowered, like lotus blooms upon still water, each petal unfurling tales of love that defied rivers and tides to cross borders not just between lands, but through the ages. As Jameson spoke, a compass rose from his palm as if conjured by magic. Its needle spun wildly before pointing steadfast toward Alara, heartbeat guiding it like an ancient drum whose rhythm had been silent for centuries until now resumed with renewed fervor. He described her ancestors, guardians of stories that held the power to heal and mend rifts not only between people but across generations, tales where a broken compass was found at the heart, or symbol misplaced by time's own hand yet always meant to right itself, with truth restored upon rediscovery. Together they envisioned Alara's lineage as custodians of these stories so that their resilience could be passed down like heirlooms through the ages, or legacy not held in hands but carried within hearts and whispered into ears across continents where time's echoes were muffled by modernity. Jameson felt his own lineage entwined with hers, as though they had been kin all along under different skies. Their shared inheritance was the art of storytelling, her power to bridge worlds and weave souls into unity against life's relentless storms. As night deepened its embrace around them, Jameson sketched a compass upon Alara's palm with words that felt like warmth from within. She understood the silent language of his heart as he spoke not just to her, but through time itself, their joined spirits transcending mere companionship. They envisioned themselves journeying hand in hand across a world parched for connection, where every compass guided them inwardly toward understanding and outwardly into shared humanity's embrace. Their stories would become the threadbare quilt that cloaked those seeking warmth against life's cold realities. Their tales became rivers of light flowing through valleys etched with history, touching lives as they cascaded down mountainsides or current strong enough to carry them into each other's souls, where once lay dormant the echoes of ancient songs and unspoken yearnings between two hearts. Alara felt her fingers trace patterns in Jameson's palm that seemed alive, pulsing with stories yet untold. Together they were weaving a tapestry richer than any compass-bound wind could carry, a symphony composed by historians through shared insights and the delicate strength found when hearts learn resilience from pain. With each story told beneath this starlit dome, Jameson's vision for tomorrow grew clearer. His words were seeds carried upon compass-bound wings that would one day find fertile ground in a world longing to remember the unity of shared human experiences, or time when tales held hands across oceans and mountains alike. And as dawn began its slow approach, Jameson knew their storytelling was more than an art. It became both their legacy and salvation for lost threads within history's vast tapestry that yearned to be mended once again by the gentle touch of understanding hands in love. As they lay beneath a canopy of twinkling stars on that first morning, when dawn began to hint at its arrival, Ilara and Jameson found solace in each other's company or shared serenity amidst life's relentless bustle. The moon hung low over the horizon like an ancient guardian witnessing their quiet reunion after countless tales had been woven beneath it by nightfall of so many previous evenings, and now they prepared to create yet another chapter in each other's lives, filled with dreamy reminiscences about times when distant lands were mere whispers on the lips of old sailors. Their storytelling began softly, as if afraid it would awaken too soon, but their connection was deep and unwavering. Every word spoken became a thread in an ever-expanding quilt that wrapped them both against life's chill grip on the soul. Alara shared first a voice tender yet livelier tale of her youth spent by a riverside where water met land at gentle bends and secret coves, hiding from time's relentless march while she played amidst nature's symphony with peers not unlike Jameson himself in spirit though different as the stars. Jameson listened intently, his eyes reflecting a world beyond their own, a past where he too had sought solace by waterfalls echoed only through hushed folklore among elders of distant villages that still clung to traditions like precious pearls around fading necks. He remembered tales as if they were tangible, touchable threads in the fabric of his own history, stories where love was a beacon guiding sailors home, and every shared glance held an unspoken promise between hearts lost at sea but found again through time's tender mercy. As Alara's narrative flowed like gentle water over pebbles, Jameson felt the surge of his own memories begin to rise within him, warmth from her voice thawing frost that had settled on days gone by and nightmares unshackled at last. With a sigh as soft as falling leaves in autumn's embrace, he began weaving tales steeped in the rich tapestry of his own experience, a journey across mountains where whispers became roars under canopies that shielded their secret rendezvous from prying eyes and ears. Together they crafted a story not just for themselves, but as homage to those who walked before them, whose voices still lingered in the hush of twilight's embrace, or legacy encoded within every shared dream and silent yearning that bridged generations across this delicate earth. Their words were like compass-bound winds guiding through history's valleys, where rivers formed paths for hearts to follow, a pilgrimage not just in body but spirit toward understanding, the unity of human experience woven into every threadbare quilt and silent prayer passed down from ancestors whose wisdom lay nestled within each fold. As dawn stretched its rosy fingers across their cheeks like tendrils reaching to pull them back into daylight's realm, Ilara's hands found Jameson's with an urgency born of love or warmth that spoke louder than words and promised renewal for all they had lost. In each other's palms was the pulse of ancient songs waiting to be sung once more, stories untold yet felt in every beat, a symphony composed not by historians with dry lips but lovers who understood that heartache held hands across oceans and mountains alike, yet testament whispered through time's fragile breath. And as they rose to greet the coming day with eyes wet from dreaming of yesteryears yet brightened by hope for tomorrow, Ilara pressed a soft kiss against Jameson's forehead before stepping over him and into her own world, or place where stories were born not just out of books, but lives lived in courageous dance between the threads. Their love was their legacy, etched upon history's vast tapestry that yearned to be mended once again by understanding hands, a quiet defiance against time's erosion and life's tempests, or gentle touch within each other, forging pathways through woven histories where echoes of ancient songs met the unspoken melodies in their own union. For as long as there were tales to be told beneath starlit domes or sun-dappled paths, Ilara and Jameson knew that every whispered legend was a balm for souls seeking solace from life's harsh winter, a compass guiding through storms with stories in hand. As dawn's first light caressed the horizon of Ilara and Jameson's village, nestled within a valley shadowed by ancient oaks, their dream-laden eyes met once more upon waking to find each other in silence filled with unspoken promises that night. The air held whispers from past generations, carried on every breeze through the cobblestone streets, a murmuring legacy they were both a part of and yet apart from, as if their very souls could bridge centuries by mere touch or glance amidst one another's embrace under this mild morning. Their love had become an ineffable story, written not only upon the pages that lined Ilara's study, but also into every crease of Jameson's hands and along his furrowed brow, where worry often settled like dew at daybreak, soon to be kissed away by their mutual resolve. As a healer who understood both flesh and spirit's mending power through song and storytelling, Ilara began her days with the sunrise, as Jameson's steady presence offered silent strength, beside which she crafted tales that would become legend when lips met ear-gentle defiance against time's erosion of memory. Together they wandered into town, where merchants and artisans shared glances, knowing Ilara's father had been a keeper of stories, just as her mother was skilled in the healing arts passed down to her by an ancient lineage that touched even their own lives with its unyielding spirit. And Jameson too bore inherited strength. His forefathers' sword once defended this very land, and now it lay silent beside a weathered journal or chronicle of personal battles against sorrow, which he zero consciously left behind, as Ilara found solace in the power woven within her voice. As they walked hand in hand through narrow alleys where history seemed to seep from ancient walls, their shared journey led them beyond town towards meadows that whispered of an age when dragons, sword, and magic swirled like mist among emerald leaves, ere time before the world grew weary with wars. Within these fields lay a mossy glade, where runes etched upon fallen stones told tales older than any living soul, stories waiting for their voices to breathe life into them once more through Ilara's gift of song and Jameson's heartfelt verses that echoed with the depth of his understanding. Here they would sit in quiet communion, where time flowed backward as forwardly under the watchful gaze of stars, unchanged since their first meeting beneath this very canopy centuries ago, within a dreamer's vision, or place not marked by years on its trees, but measured instead with stories nestled between each leaf. Their shared whispers became harmonies that melded into the ambient symphony nature offered up, where Ilara's lilting melodies and Jameson's soulful humming drew forth echoes of ancient songs which danced amongst the mad tapestry being woven on this very spot as they swayed in sync to a love-forged rhythm. The air around their interlocked fingers carried the weight of centuries, yet felt imbued with freshness only found where hearts beat true and time bowed before passion's call, or tender symphony composed, not by historians, but lovers who knew history, as they lived it in each other's palms. As day gave way to dusk that same evening, within the comforting embrace of their village, Ilara would trace patterns into herbs and flowers, with Jameson at her side, or language unspoken, where every touch was both question and answer, a balm for souls seeking solace from life's harsh winter as it offered warmth against frost. They were guides to one another through stormy seas, holding tightly onto the compass of their stories that pointed towards hope's horizon, a gentle touch within each other, crafting pathways across woven histories where echoes and unspoken melodies met in quiet defiance against life's tempests. Ilara and Jameson understood deeply as they lay beneath a blanket shared between two souls that night. Their dream-laden love was the very legacy to be mended upon history's vast tapestry, a testament whispered through time's fragile breath, where heartache held hands across oceans and mountains alike. As stars blinked into existence above them, each a storyteller themselves in their own right, as they gazed outward to the heavens, Ilara pressed her kiss against Jameson's forehead before stepping over him, and then, as Ilara stepped over Jameson into his dreamscape of endless skies and tranquil waters where he sought refuge from reality, she paused to absorb a final glance that was all too brief, silent promise etched in shared glances across the divide between worlds. In this realm, untouched by time's relentless march or history's harsh pen strokes, they found an oasis of peace, where only their presence mattered and past regrets were but shadows dissolving under warmth and understanding that flowered in every tender touch shared between two lovers. With the last note of a celestial lullaby cradling her heartbeat into slumber, Elora found herself wandering through corridors crafted from memories within Jameson's minder labyrinth, where echoes danced in harmony with hushed breaths and soft sighs. Each step was a note sustained by the melody of their unspoken promises, every turn an unfolding chapter written upon ethereal parchment beneath moonlit whispers that spoke to them alone, a sacred script penned not in ink but with love's enduring essence as its foundation. Their spirits danced among the stars they could only reach for through dream and yearning, tracing constellations back into their hands like stardust-dusted fingers, seeking to reshape destiny itself. In this dance of cosmic reverie, where time stood still under night's embrace, Elora felt her heartbeat sync with the pulsing rhythm of a world unbound by earthly constraints, a realm that accepted no boundaries save those imposed upon love's boundless horizon and their shared journey through life. As she drifted further into this dream tapestry woven from every stolen moment, Jameson's thoughts wrapped around her in an embrace as warm as the first summer sun after a long winter, testament to resilience found within love's quiet strength against history's relentless gales. In his mind world, where he and Elora were both guardian and wanderer, they tended to fields of wildflowers that bloomed with colors unseen by mortal eyes. Here was the landscaping for their eternal summer, refuge from life's harsh winter rains upon which hope's delicate blossoms could thrive. Together in this shared reverie, they traversed forgotten paths, through ancient groves where legends whispered secrets only to those who dared listen close enough for a heart-beater world that existed within the depth of their bond and reflected back at them with mirroring clarity as if love itself had folded space into concentric circles. Here, in this sacred sanctuary birthed, from longings unfulfilled outside its borders yet richly lived out, between two souls adrift upon history's tide, Elora found solace not just for her own heart, but also the promise of an ever-growing tale to be told by time itself. In a place where past and present intertwined like vines around their arms, they discovered that love's true journey was never forward nor backward. It lived in moments suspended between breaths or tender passage through the seasons of affection which neither age could erode nor sorrow dim its glow. And within these hallowed bounds, where all else faded to grayscale against life's relentless advance, Elora and Jameson were immortalized not by years but etched forever into a legacy that would echo in whispers across generations, like the soft rustling of leaves parting ways for just one more breeze, an everlasting testament to love's power as an unwavering beacon amidst life's tempests. As dawn approached with rosy fingers casting light upon their shared dream, they knew that although time would march forward outside the cocoon of night's embrace and history might inscribe tales on scrolls for future eyes to unfurl, their story was a timeless ballad composed within each other's hearts. And as Elora whispered goodbye with every tear kissing her cheek, she knew that their love had become the gentle wind beneath hope's wings which carried forth melodies of healing and restoration across horizons far beyond, where they stood an enduring legacy woven into history's vast tapestry. In this final communion with Jameson, as sunrise painted new beginnings upon the canvas of reality, Elora's heart swelled not just for herself, but also in reverence to their shared journey that transcended mere mortality, and odyssey inscribed within Elora ever since those final days spent in her husband Jameson's arms had found herself wandering the cobblestone pathways of Evermore more often than she could recall. The town seemed to cradle their love story like a cherished heirloom within its very essence, a place where Elora's sorrow was as much an intimate part of her being, yet comforted by this magical refuge that felt woven from the threads of dream stuff itself. One morning found Elora seated upon their favorite bench in Evermore's oldest park. A gentle pearl amongst dew-kissed roses and marigolds, her testament to Jameson's memory, which she had begun leaving like breadcrumb trails of gratitude for the love they shared. Elora would write messages on delicate leaves plucked from nature's own handiwork, each word a tender caress against her skin, as if hoping that perhaps this gesture might bridge across time and space to reach him one last time before he had crossed over into their eternal embrace within Evermore's heart. As the sun peaked above the horizon of endless meadows or vast expanse where sky kisses earth with a tender, blushing touch each dawn, as if fearful not to wake too soon from its slumber upon night's shoulder, Elora would watch it melt into evermore and feel her heart swell. It was in this place that Elora sought the solace of Jameson's memory, where echoes of their laughter remained suspended, undiminished by time or distance. Jameson had been a storyteller, at heart a man who believed his narrative lived on within every whispered lullaby and secret smile he gifted Elora during the daylight hours they shared together in Evermore's embrace, before fate took him to where only souls like their own transcended. Now she carried with her a collection of stories penned not by his hand, but inspired from within tales that would one fine morning find themselves nestled between pages bound as the book he left unfinished on Evermore's library shelf when they bid farewell to mortality's realm. Elora knew it was her responsibility, a sacred duty given by Jameson in his final breath of promise that their essence would continue through love and lore intertwined with the very fabric of existence here within Evermore's charm-infused boundaries. Each word she wrote became an offering to posterity, each memory revisited upon these pages, a gentle homage paid not only to Jameson, but also to all who found solace in his stories or legacy that might inspire future generations as it had comforted her own heart over countless evenings by the light of their shared hearth. On days when Evermore felt too still and silent, Elora would wander through its hidden lanes which seemed to stretch into infinity's horizon, seeking out encounters with strangers who might carry a spark from Jameson's own spirit within the kindred soul whose laughter could echo his mirth, or eyes hold the same depth of wisdom he possessed. Yet Elora knew that even if she were never blessed to find such company again in Evermore, her story and love for Jameson would continue living on through a narrative uniquely hers, but forever entwined with their intertwining destinies or ballads sung by the heartstrings of two souls destined not just for each other. Evenings here were where Elora's creativity found its truest voice, as she wove dreamscapes from Jameson's tales into tapestries that lined Evermore's walls and whispered to those who passed by her visual symphony of their shared journey through love. These works became beacons for the weary traveler seeking refuge in Evermore. They were a testament to what it meant not just to live together, but to thrive within each other's company, even as worldly existence grew distant memories like stars that once guided sailors along uncertain shores. As time flowed onward outside the sanctuary of in chapter 23 of our tale woven with care and a touch as gentle as nightfall's caress, Elora found herself in Evermore once more, a town where every cobblestone whispered secrets to those who dared listen closely enough for the truth. It was on one such evening when shadows grew long like fingers stretching across her path that she sensed a familiar warmth not quite felt before, an invitation from beyond herself beckoning gently into Evermore's heart. Elora knew of the hearth or place said to exist in the very soul of any town where love had blossomed but faded away like autumn leaves whisked by winter's breath. It was a sanctuary for memories and dreams, nestled between reality's harsh grasping fingers and ever-after moments that danced just beyond reach. Her place. Elora herself felt the pull of her own story intertwining with Jameson's last echoes within Evermore's embrace. As she meandered through familiar lanes, each step seemed to unlock whispers from past conversations and laughter that lingered like sweet perfume in the air, a nostalgic aroma of love once lived vividly beneath moonlit skies, now shrouded by night's deep velvet curtain. The town's heartbeat thrummed through her, resonating with Jameson's unfinished melody that promised solace to any who carried the weight of worldly longing in their chest. One particular evening found Elora drawn into a dim café, tucked away behind ivy-draped arches, where echoes melded seamlessly with soft jazz hums and gentle clinks of porcelain upon saucers, all coaxing tales from the walls themselves, stories spun not just by patrons, but also through Elora's own dreamscapes. Here she found herself drawn to a woman whose eyes mirrored ocean's depth, yet shimmered with untold secrets as their gazes met across the café's murmuring ambience, and something within them spoke in silent understanding that transcended mere words or shared glances or kindred spirit. This stranger was a poet of life's essence. Her soul carried fragments of Jameson's laughter mingled with strokes of melancholy wisdom like watercolors on the horizon line, blending into hues Elora recognized all too well from within herself, and their shared history a tapestry woven over years that seemed to pause in time around them. They spoke not only through spoken language, but also via glances. They conversed with every unspoken thought passing between them, as if sharing an invisible thread spun by the fates themselves, a connection forged without form yet so potent and true. As chapters of their dialogue unfolded in nonverbal symphonies beneath lamplight's glowing halo, language not spoken but felt deep within one's marrow, Laura discovered comfort in this encounter, as if two solitary figures suddenly found themselves part of a duet. It was here that she learned the name Eleanor and watched her paint stories on canvas with whispers from Jameson's heartbeat guiding each stroke. Tales not entirely different, but distinctly hers, told through shared experiences, yet uniquely portrayed, as if Evermore itself had become an extension of their entwined destinies. Elora's journey, led by this newfound connection, brought her to the edge of the hearth, or place where stories lived and breathed within walls that echoed with laughter from yesteryears, like reverberating harmonics through a grand piano's strings, vibrations felt rather than heard. Here, in Evermore's hidden heartbeat, was an oasis for souls seeking solace, not just of the body, but also restoration to their spirit, or place Elora recognized as much more than mere stone and mortar. It represented a pause between chapters, when life's narrative seemed too vast, yet intimate tales yearned to be told. Inside the hearth's warm embrace that night, she found not only the comfort of her cherished memories with Jameson, but also an understanding whispered through every heartbeat shared between Elora and this enigmatic poet, a linear, silent accord promising to carry their love forward without bounds. The air here felt laden with stories yet untold, each person's tale a thread that wove the grand tapestry of life's endless ballad. As Elora sat at an aged wooden table by candlelight and listened, Elora found herself seated opposite a man with eyes that seemed to hold an ocean of tales within their depths, and lips curved in perpetual contemplation. It was Eleanor, poet from whom she had sought solace for her aching heart upon learning the tragic fate of Jameson. As they sat together at the hearth's ancient wooden table by candlelight that night, their conversation began to unfold like a delicate tapestry woven with threads of shared sorrow and unexpected camaraderie. Each word was chosen not just for its meaning, but also for the healing it promised. Eleanor started softly, as though her words were droplets that might calm an ocean's surface. The loss you carry is a tempest no soul should weather alone. Her voice carried warmth amidst their shared grief, and in its resonance the weight on Elora's chest seemed to ease. Elora nodded her gratitude as she replied with words that were tender yet truthful. Evermore has become my sanctuary, where I find fragments of solace within these hallowed walls. She looked around at the hearth, a place seemingly forgotten by time and filled to the brim with echoes from past laughter. Here, in this haven, was no mere building. It cradled stories as if they were sacred relics. It whispered of lives lived fully beneath its vaulted ceilings, where every story had left an indelible mark on the heart's essence, just like Elora's and Jameson's. As the night wore on, tales flowed between them as if their souls were rivers meeting in a confluence of shared melancholy yet intertwined spirits, a reflection not only of what was lost, but also an acknowledgment that stories are eternally reborn through remembrance and connection. Eleanor recited poems from her travels, each line resonating with the profound sorrow for a love unfulfilled by absence rather than presence, while their shared gaze spoke volumes more to one another, a silent understanding of how deeply loss can shape yet not define us. In this sacred exchange beneath the hearth's protective embrace lay Elora's realization that though her heart ached for Jameson and the love they had once known, it was also within these walls where she could find a renewed sense of self, or chapter in life yet unwritten. It became clear to her as if by some mystical revelation. Each story told herein held not just memories, but lessons too subtle for words alone to convey, the strength that comes from shared vulnerability, the quiet courage found in grief's embrace, and most importantly, the indomitable spirit of hope residing within every heart. The poet Elena gifted Elora with a notebook as they parted ways. Her presence became an unspoken promise to continue weaving tales that honored the past while offering solace for those who would listen in years hence, just like the hearth itself, a vessel through which stories lived and breathed. As morning light crept into Evermore's ancient heartbeat, and Elora stood from her seat, by candlelight's dwindling flame, she felt the beginning of a newfound strength within herself, an understanding that life was not simply about enduring but also about finding beauty in its ebbing flow. She knew then as surety, as if whispered into being once more through the hearth's walls. Her journey and every tale shared would continue to resonate, echoes of love transcending the boundaries between past sorrows and future joys, a continuum that bound them all in an eternal dance. Alora walked away from the hearth with a heart both lighter than it had been upon arrival, but also more intricately threaded into the fabric of stories, recognizing her story as one among countless others yet to be told, her tale not just about loss and love found, but about resilience and remembrance. She felt ready now, ever more equipped with Jameson's memory nestled within a cornerstone for new-found hope, the tales of the hearth guiding her forward into chapters still unwritten where Alora herself would become part of an endless beloved story that was and always had been hers to tell. And as she ventured beyond its threshold, beneath sunbeams piercing through curtains heavy with the night's embrace, it seemed for a moment evermore itself held her breath in suspension before releasing it gently into daybreak's promissory testament, that even amid sorrow, and Alora paused for a moment as she stood on the threshold of the hearth, her hand resting lightly upon its cool stone balustrade before taking it in full and walking away with graceful steps that seemed to echo against the silence left behind. As sunlight began to filter through heavy curtains draped across the windows, casting a warm glow over everything she touched, dust motes danced like tiny fairies caught between light beams as Alora turned her back on the hearth with reverence for its enduring presence and comfort in memories. The journey ahead was not entirely certain. It stretched out before her, a path both familiar and unknown, a road paved by the footsteps of generations past, but also open to those yet unborn. Alora felt an ancestral call that beckoned forth tales from within the hearth's ancient walls, stories woven through time like threads in tapestry, where each strand was a life, and every hue reflected experiences both joyful and melancholic alike, a palette of human existence. As she ventured forward into the world beyond its threshold with Jameson's memory cradled close to her heartbeat, Alora carried within herself not just personal recollections, but also an inheritance from the hearth's legacy, a testament that love and loss were entwined in perpetual motion or dance of days, where each step forward was as much about remembering what had been lost as it was celebrating the found. It wasn't long before Alora encountered other travelers, souls adrift like her own, seeking their way through life's unpredictable currents, and as strangers at first glance but kindred spirits soon after discovering shared wanderlust under the hearth's watchful gaze. One such individual was Thomas, a bard whose voice had the power to weave magic into melodies that could charm even the coldest of hearts, and who wore his tales like cloaks about him wherever he went, stories rich with adventure, sorrow, but always hope at their core, a living library carrying verses from times forgotten. Alora found herself drawn to Thomas's songs as a moth is lured by flame. Her feet led her back towards the hearth, where the bard sat on an ancient bench near its entrance, engrossed in reciting stanzas that spoke of love lost at sea, heroes fallen and forgotten, kingdoms risen from ash. Their eyes met her spark between them as if each contained a piece of other's heart's puzzle. She approached him with curiosity laced through her words, while the world outside the hearth continued to turn unconcerned by their silent understanding that stories were not merely tales told, but lives shared and experiences treasured. Within this haven, where time seemed suspended, Alora allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, willing surrender into the belief that every story has its ebbs and flows like tides under lunar sway. It was here she confided in Thomas her own tale, woven with threads golden and dark alike. Together they spoke beneath starlight's soft caress as Alora unveiled chapters of love found, but also loss endured, her journey through the hearth's memories, where the heart could roam freely without fear or shame for its scars etched upon it by life's hand. As night deepened into a velvet curtain adorned with silver stars above them all that Alora and Thomas shared, they discovered kinship in their own odysseys. Her narrative found resonance within his chorus of songs as she realized how stories were but vessels for connection, or bridge from one soul to another across vast distances. In turn, he gifted her melodies rich with the echoes of the hearth's past and promises of a future still unwritten. Their shared language was music interspersed throughout spoken word that needed no translation, because its essence transcended time itself, her universal dialect for humanity. The dawn eventually broke like an artist's brushstroke across the canvas sky, painting hues of pink and gold upon the hearth's stonework as Alara prepared to continue her journey beyond this enclave where stories were shared in earnest trust amongst those who sought refuge within its embrace. She had found not just solace, but also purpose or reason for continuing forward into the world with Jameson's memory and newfound companions like Thomas cradled close, knowing that every step taken was a note added to life's ballad. Each heartbeat sounded out their combined rhythms within as dawn crept into their world with gentle fingers of light caressing the hearth's edges. Ilara felt a comfort that had been absent for so long. Its warm embrace seemed to promise endless possibilities as she stood there sharing one last look at the haven where stories were treasures and songs held truth. Thomas nodded solemnly, his eyes reflecting understanding beyond words or silent agreement between two souls linked by shared experiences of loss, but also discovery in each other's narratives. Their journey had taken them through a tapestry woven with heartache as Alara learned to face her past alongside the melodies Thomas spun from his memories. The hearth was more than just an enclave, it was where healing transpired amidst tales of love and separation, each story adding its thread into their shared quilt. As they parted ways with a heavy heart, but firm in the knowledge that bonds forged through mutual understanding were unbreakable, Ilara knew her path would lead back to the hearth time after again, her pilgrimage fueled by memories and stories yet still being told under its protective shadow. Now as she stood at their last common crossing point with Thomas, the sun's first rays painted streaks of gold on Alara's cheeks while her heart felt like a lullaby in itself, her tender serenade to guide her forward from the hearth into new beginnings. She knew that every story she shared and song she sang carried with them the spirit imbued by Thomas, which now lived within her chest as well. Their unique language of connection was a gift passed down through time's relentless river, a testament to the hearth's eternal impact on its travelers. With each step Alara took towards an unknown horizon that stretched infinitely before them, she felt the presence of all who had sought refuge in her company and comfort within these walls. Their spirits lingered with a quiet dignity amidst shared laughter, tears, stories, and songs, a continuous echo through time. Alara's newfound resolve to continue this ballad was as much for herself as it was for others who might one day seek solace in the same way she had found peace here. Her heart beat a rhythm that resonated with joy intermingled with sorrow, hope entwined within memory's very essence of the hearth's enduring legacy. As Alara left behind an old world and ventured into tomorrow's dawn, she carried not just the weight of her own history, but also a piece of each story that had unfolded in these sacred halls. Every tale woven through time was now part of hers to share, as well as melodies strung together with others' experiences. The journey ahead promised encounters both challenging and exhilarating, where the past would meet future yet somehow feel ever present within her soul's tapestry. She sought not just a destination, but also growth along this path of self-discovery that was still being written with every heartbeat. Embarking on adventures beyond the hearth's confines, Ilara embraced the unknown as though it were an old friend cloaked in mystery. Her spirit danced to a rhythm set by those who had come before and also hummed softly with possibilities yet undiscovered. The world outside was vast beyond measure, but not without its own kind of magic that mirrored the heart's essence, a symphony for the senses, where every sight, sound, touch, taste, and scent played a note in humanity's endless song. Ilara found beauty within this complexity as she wandered through life with eyes open to all forms of connection. In moments when solitude whispered its siren call amidst the clamor for companionship, Thomas' voice seemed like an unseen echo, guiding her forward, a reminder that, even in quietude, there was a melody waiting just beyond reach. His memory lived on within each story Alara told and every verse she penned. As night once again cloaked the sky with its velvety darkness, punctuated by shimmering stars like diamonds strewn upon black satin, Thomas' absence became a comfort, as familiar to her heartbeat, her gentle reminder that love's tapestry continued beyond physical presence. Her soul felt interwoven with his essence in the shared language of stories and songs. They were companions for eternity within this temporal realm where every end was but an invitation to new beginnings as beautiful and infinite as time itself. And so Alara let her gaze wander beyond the window pane of the hearth's quaint kitchen where she now sat, a cup cradled in one hand, and an old typewriter before her as Thomas had left his mark not just with memories, but also through this tangible legacy. Each tap on the keys was like rain upon parched earth, or a celebration of moments shared between two souls who found solace together within these walls, where history's whispers could be heard in every creak and sigh of the hearth itself, as if time had spun a tapestry rich with their love. The story Elora wrote was not just her own, it flowed through the veins of Thomas' spirit that lingered within these rooms. It danced along the edges of memories and dreams they both held dear until now, when she began to script a new chapter for herself without him beside. Tonight's tale would be an ode dedicated not only to his memory but also as her own expression or narrative, where love transcended physical presence like their journey did before it branched into untold paths beyond the hearth's threshold. And even though the room was heavy with silence that Thomas left behind, Elora found comfort in letting memories weave themselves through written words. She wrote of a day spent wandering hand in hand along cobblestone streets lined by antiquity's echoes, when they first met, her serendipitous encounter under the warm glow of an amber sunset that had been their backdrop for countless shared discoveries. It was on these very walks where Thomas' laughter mingled with her own, creating symphonies and sonnets in his speech patterned after hers, yet uniquely intimate to them both. It was within the hearth's walls that they found a sanctuary away from the world beyond its embrace. As Elora's fingers danced across the keys, her mind journeyed back through summer nights filled with music and song, or cascade of tunes as intricate as their love was deep, each note playing off one another in harmonious melody like threads interlacing within a richly embroidered quilt that wrapped around them both. Her heart ached to recount the warmth they shared on these afternoons, spent nestled under blankets listening intently as Thomas played his guitar, and she would reciprocate with gentle strumming of her own or hums inspired by melodies born within the hearth's walls. The story unfolded through the seasons. It was a tapestry that detailed their blossoming love amidst stormy weathers, where Elora's resilience paralleled Thomas' War 0185 and wavering support, painting each moment of joy and sorrow with equal strokes. A chapter spoke of autumn leaves cascading down the street outside the hearth as they celebrated their 1-year anniversary. She wrote about how he had tenderly patted her back when I felt overwhelmed by raindrops, his touch a comforting balm to my soul, just like it was in each other's presence. But with the passage of time came change, an unspoken understanding that life beyond their shared solitude called for both strength and vulnerability as Elora's mother faced her health decline. This, too, became a part of the hearth's narrative, where compassion was woven within its very foundation. The tale reached dusk when Thomas fell ill with an unnamed malady that no medicine seemed to alleviate, her mystery as intricate and unfathomable as the night sky above them, a reminder of mortality's silent footfall through every heartbeat echoed within the hearth. Elora's hands trembled slightly over her storytelling keys. She knew that this chapter would be fraught with shadows. Where light had once lived abundantly, their love was not just a feeling but an entity of its own, now encapsulated in paper and memory to carry forward when the physical presence faded. Yet, amidst fears about Thomas' health, Elora discovered solace within her craft. She poured onto pages tales where their shared journey continued beyond the hearth's embrace, her testament that even after one soul departs this earthly plane, a connection remains indelible and eternal. She wrote of dreaming under the same stars they had once caressed with hands entwined. She envisioned Thomas beside her in newfound love as life unfurled its mysteries beyond their cherished waltzer's story, where the hearth was in chapter XXXX of the hearth's chronicles, a testament to love and legacy. Elora's fingers danced with precision over her keys as she composed a new chapter under the soft glow of candlelight, her faithful companion in times when electricity seemed like an alien concept. This evening was different. It carried weight heavier than usual darkness that settled upon their hearts and the hearth, which had stood by them through seasons, both warm and cold for decades now. The night's stillness echoed with the memories of laughter and soft murmurs shared between Elora and Thomas, her symphony composed over years, where every note represented moments cherished within these walls that they called home. Yet, as if to mirror their own quiet fears for his health, a chilling draught whispered through the hearth's cracks at dawn's first light when all seemed still. Elora penned of Thomas by her side in the Gardiner place, where once he had brought joy and life, with blooming flowers that stood as mute witnesses to his love for Elora, a man whose spirit transcended mere flesh. His frail silhouette against the backdrop of their beloved roses seemed an ethereal vision from days past. She wrote about this tender memory when he would often tell her how much each flower represented her petals' fragility and beauty as part of life's intricate dance between strength and vulnerability. As Elora narrated, the shadows in the hearth grew longer with twilight approaching. She felt an ancient oak tree standing guard outside their window, swaying to a silent melody only heard within these walls, an elegy for Thomas' health that no one dared speak aloud. She wrote of his once robust frame now resembling the gnarled trunk, each line upon it telling tales as deep and complex as the hearth's own history written by generations before them. In her writing, Elora found a strange comfort that night, or solace in giving form to their shared journey within words on paper. Thomas had taught her this love language of letters when they first met at the library's dusty shelves lined with books as numerous and timeless as the hearth itself. She wrote about how he loved learning, his eyes always questing beyond what was written before him, seeker after knowledge in a world that often seemed to shrink from truth's full measure. She penned their first meeting at the library under an aged chandelier where dust motes danced like sprites celebrating new beginnings. Elora remembered his smile, kind and earnest, as he approached her with tales of fantasy worlds that held no bound by physical realms, a man whose dreamy eyes hinted at a soul unanchored from earthly concerns. Elora wrote about their shared passion for the stars above them on clear nights when the hearth was quiet, save for whispers between lovers and old friends alike. She spoke of how Thomas would trace constellations with his gaze, as if to etch each one into her very being. His love story extended beyond human timer. Celeste Zero Ryle ballet performed under the watchful eyes of infinity itself. As Elora wove their tale, the hearth's atmosphere shifted subtly, an air that spoke not just of loss, but also a promise etched into every letter she wrote with her trembling hand. For even as Thomas' vitality ebbed like the retreating tides, his essence within these walls never ceased to pulse through the hearth's veins. She chronicled how their love story continued beyond what eyes could see, a legacy of shared dreams and whispered secrets that lived on in every corner where dust danced with light when the sun kissed them awake each morning. In her tale, Elora recounted times they would sit beneath the hearth's expansive oak tree under which Thomas had confided his fear of mortality, or silent acknowledgment that even as life ebbed and flowed like the tides themselves, their love was a constant amidst change. She wrote how he faced this reality with her heart. They never dwelled on despair, but rather found strength in each other's presence to weather whatever storm might come next for them, or the hearth itself a testament of resilience through the unknown depths that lay ahead as twilight gave way to night. And there, within her words, Elora discovered an unspoken understanding. Even though Thomas' body had grown weak and his breath grew shallow like smoke